Hey, distance learners. So we are going to be taking notes on political parties and their platform. A platform just means like their general belief for that political party. So the reason why we have political parties is just to make it easier for people who are voting. So as of October 12th, 2020, there were over 1,000 different candidates running for president. If we didn't have political parties, you would kind of have to research each and every one of those candidates on all sorts of different beliefs and votes and stances to figure out who you would like to vote for. And that would just be for president. That's not talking about your state representatives, your senators, or even local officials. So the reason why we have those political parties is to kind of summarize the viewpoints of political candidates. We know what the Republican Party stands for, so we kind of know what Donald Trump stands for when we vote for president. We know what the Democratic Party stands for, so we kind of know what Joe Biden stands for when we vote for president. All right, so the role of government. If you guys open up that party platform notes sheet right here, it's going to make taking notes a lot easier. If you'd rather just take your notes on paper, that's absolutely fine. So we're going to go over 6 different issues and the Democratic view on those issues and the Republican view on those issues. So starting with the role of government. Democrats tend to want the government to get more involved to address certain issues like education, healthcare, environment, so on and so forth. They would like the federal government to increase spending or increase programs or policies to help solve some of these issues or help the people within these issues. Republicans, on the other hand, believe that the government should get less involved to address those issues, and that should be left up to states, governments, local governments, or even businesses and corporations, or even different groups, volunteer groups. All right, both of these have their pluses and minuses. With more government involvement, that means that there's a larger safety net to help people who are struggling, but it can get really expensive and it can cause our debt to go out of control. It could also cause restrictions on businesses and even some personal freedoms if it got too restrictive. For the Republican side, it would definitely allow more freedoms for states to kind of tailor the laws to fit their own state and their own citizens, but it could mean less support for citizens if those states aren't stepping up and doing the right thing, or if those different businesses, corporations, or groups aren't stepping up to do the right thing or solve those issues. This one's an important one, which is why on your notes I have 2 little stars by it. This one pretty much defines the difference between these 2 political parties. To also help you out if you're a Parks and Rec fan, when you think of the Democratic government, you might want to think of Leslie Knope. In the show, she's constantly like adding different programs, increasing funding to help the people living in Pawnee, to help Pawnee be a better place. For Parks and Rec fans, you might want to think of Ron Swanson when you think of the Republican side. Both of these people are very extreme examples, but in the show, Ron Swanson doesn't want the government to get as involved because he thinks it's a waste of tax dollar money for the government to do it. He feels like it would be done more efficiently by private businesses or private groups. All right, taxes. Put my little face over here. For the Democratic side, they're more likely to raise taxes on households making over $250,000, so wealthier households and larger businesses and corporations. Their thought behind it is might as well tax those who have the money to pay for those taxes. The one bad thing about this is it could mean less money for businesses to make investments, and when businesses make investments, it could cause an increase in jobs. So by taxing them more, we might be hindering their ability to expand their businesses. The Republican side is less likely to raise taxes on those wealthier households making over $250,000 and less likely to raise taxes on large businesses and corporations. Republicans also have the idea of something called trickle-down economics. Not all Republicans believe in this different theory, but some Republicans do. And this came from a very famous Republican president, President Ronald Reagan. Trickle-down economics kind of works like this, where you give tax cuts to the wealthy that have those large businesses and corporations. Those people will then invest in their own businesses because they just saved a bunch of money on taxes. So they can invest it into their own businesses. When they invest it into their own businesses, that creates jobs, which helps employees, people who might need jobs on unemployment. And then those people then have money that they can spend on smaller businesses, which helps other people who are employed who aren't those large corporations or businesses. The benefit of this is that, yes, when you give um, those tax cuts, the wealthy can invest more and help create more jobs. But some people kind of criticize the trickle down economics as not being super effective. They believe that it's not fair that the wealthy are getting taxed at a lower rate in comparison to the rest of the income brackets. If you need more time to write that down, go ahead and put the video on pause, push play when you're ready. All right, businesses. Democrats believe that they should have more support for unions. Unions are like a group of workers that kind of set rules within a business regarding how employees are treated, like employee hours, different working conditions, and employee pay. So they might set rules about like how many vacation days people can take, how many hours people can work, so on and so forth. Democrats believe that this helps protect workers. Republicans believe that this could actually take away workers' freedoms. So if a person wants to work so many hours in a day or so many hours in a week, why would you stop them? Democrats feel like that is protecting them from being overworked and underappreciated. Republicans feel like that's stepping on their personal freedoms as a worker. If you need more time to write that down, go ahead and put the video on pause, push play when you're ready. All right, abortion. This is one where, yes, they definitely disagree, but there are actually some areas where they agree upon. Democrats tend to be very pro-choice, where they think or they believe that a woman has the right to choose whether or not to abort an unborn fetus. Republicans tend to be very pro-choice, where they feel like abortion should be illegal. Here's an area where they do agree. Some moderate Democrats and some moderate Republicans believe that abortion should be allowed under some circumstances. So, for example, they might agree upon a circumstance such as a woman is pregnant with a baby and that baby has a lot of different health issues and might not survive birth, but giving birth would threaten that mother's life. Like she would die if she gave birth, kind of a situation. If you need more time to write that down, go ahead and put the video on pause, push play when you're ready. All right, military. Here's another one where they also agree upon. They both support military use. Sometimes they disagree on how to use that military. One difference is Democrats are less likely to increase military spending. Republicans are more likely to increase military spending. If you need more time to write that down, go ahead and put the video on pause, push play when you're ready. All right, education. This is the very last one. Democrats tend to support federal funding for public schools, even if they are considered failing or not meeting their standardized testing goals. When you guys take your standardized test, that goes to the school district so they can decide what kind of programs they need to add to their school. It also goes to the federal government and they're changed into or turned into grades for that school. So if a school is failing to meet their goals set by their state, they would be considered failing. One way that Democrats feel like you could address these failing schools is to by give them more funding so they have more resources so that way they can get out of that failing status. Republicans feel like that's not an efficient way to do it, and they support school vouchers where students from these failing schools would be given vouchers or grants so that way they can take like that money given to them by the federal government and go to a private school, which is generally seen as a non-failing school. Democrats oppose the school voucher system. They believe that that's an inefficient way to fix the failing school. They also support affirmative action, which means, like, for example, colleges may be required to accept a certain amount of people from a different minority group when accepting people into college. Republicans oppose affirmative action, feeling more so that if that individual has worked hard, um, backgrounds should not play a part in college acceptance. Federal and student loans are supported by the Democrats, and this is meant to help disadvantaged people, like people from poor backgrounds or where their household isn't making $250,000. And those are loans coming from the government at a lower rate to help make college more affordable for those students. Republicans oppose federal student loans. They do want people from different backgrounds going to college, but they feel like that should be supported and addressed by private banks rather than the federal government. All right, that's all you have to take notes on. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, you can go ahead and take these notes and put them somewhere safe in a folder, a binder. We are going to be using them later on this week, um, tomorrow or Thursday. Okay, don't quote me on that. Just know that you're going to use these later on this week. So make sure you keep them somewhere safe.